everyone, today in this video I'm going to be checking out the Tineco Floor One S5 Pro 2. If you're interested in this smart cordless floor washer or you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. There are really only a couple of things to set up. First, we can start by getting our main charging station and base set up just by pressing those into place. Now we can store things like our filter, our extra brush, and our cleaning tool. With that out of the way, it just leaves us with our handle to install. It's only going to fit and operate one way, so make sure you have it installed properly, just like you see right here. So it's going to slide down that way. You want this part to overhang with the rest of the wet dry vac. So from that hole up at the top, you're just going to gently slide this in and then press down and it will snap in place. There we go. It just snapped in place. Super simple and straightforward. Now we have our wet dry vac all set up and ready to go. So let's charge it up and try it out. Now that our clean's out of the way, let's take a look at the results. First up, the washable filter looks great. Occasionally you might find some things in here that you want to make sure that you rinse out. In our case, we have a little piece of fuzz right there, and I see another piece right there as well. But just put that under the faucet and you'll be all set and ready to go. Next, in the dirty water tank itself, we poured out the contents, but we still have to make sure that we wash this out. We have some heavier sediment that settled at the bottom. And then you'll notice the rest of the dirty water tank on the lid looks fine, nothing there. You might notice that floating chunk of hair, that was actually collected right up here in the dirty water tank. So you'll probably notice some similar larger items like that as well after your clean. And then we have some heavier objects down at the bottom of our dirty water. Now, this actually looks fairly clean, but I'm still impressed it's still this dirty because I've actually cleaned my floors 4 times in the last 24 hours. So blown away that we're still picking up stuff around my house. Next, brush roller cover. Top looks flawless. Underneath, we do have some hair buildup already. So just make sure when you're rinsing this out, get in the habit of just removing this as well and rinsing that off too. And then last but not least, the main brush roller. This looks great. No discoloration, no staining, or anything like that. It still is a little bit damp, but it's not dripping water or anything like that. You can't wring it out or anything along those lines. Just a little bit damp to the touch. S5 Pro 2 stack up against the competition? Well, let's find out. We'll be comparing it to all the other wet dry vacs that we've personally tested and used. So first up, let's talk about decibels. This is how loud the wet dry vac is. It peaks at 78 decibels compared to your average wet dry vac of 77 decibels. So technically it's 1 decibel louder, but in the real world, having them side by side, a 77 decibel unit here and a 78 decibel unit here, there'd be no distinguishable difference. Next up is a new metric we're covering called in-use airflow. This is measured in FPM. So typically the higher the better is what we're thinking we want to see long term here to equate to better real world performance and cleaning on our floors. This unit got a score of 364 FPM compared to the competition, an average of 406, so slightly lower. And same for the in-use suction, same thing measured on the floor at the brush roller, 0.87 compared to a score of 1.45. That may be in part due to the rated power measured in watts, but I'm not sure there's a direct relationship between all three of these specs. This unit has a 220 watt rating compared to your typical wet dry vac of 300 watts. Battery life is what you'd expect, 35 minutes compared to the average of 36. Battery capacity comes in at 4,000 milliamp hours compared to your typical average battery capacity of 3680. Clean water tank is above average, which is great to see. That just means less trips for you to go back and fill up the water tank during your cleaning. 800 milliliters compared to 780. Same can be said for dirty water tank, 720 milliliters compared to 650. That's going to save you a couple of trips during the cleaning process. Next up, we're looking at a new feature we're just starting to see trickle down to wet dry vacs. This is hot water self-clean. Tineco uses 158 Fahrenheit hot water to wash and clean the mop. In this case, it's absent from the S5 Pro 2, but don't worry, about 1% of the units out there even have this feature. The ones that we personally used are the Stretch S6 and the Switch S7. Next, let's talk about edge cleaning. So how many sides, if any, of the wet dry vac support getting up close and personal to your edges and baseboards? In this case, we have one edge that's dedicated to that, which is great to see. Typically, you'll find a lot either have 1 or 2 sides available. So in this case, we're slightly below average, but really your choices are 0, 1, or 2. So in this case, we're seeing more that have 1 or 2 versus 0. Moving right along, let's talk about LED lights. I feel like this is a miss for this unit to not include an LED light bar front and center. But looking at all of the data out there, only around 20% of wet dry vacs even have an LED light. But I feel like this particular unit would be a great choice and option to have that, since it's going to be one of the top of the line in the S5 series. That would be a welcomed addition. Last but not least, let's talk about cost. So with all the data that we just looked at in regards to its cleaning performance, as well as its feature set, is it worthwhile? Well, compared to your typical average wet dry vac, you'll notice that we are going to be more expensive. The S5 Pro 2 will be about $100 more than your typical wet dry vac. So you have to ask yourself, is everything that we just discussed or what you've seen in this video worthwhile to justify that? Spoiler alert, it's not. For most of you out there, you'll be better off with the S5. That's going to be the better value. That was my favorite wet dry vac until recently. It just got dethroned by the Tineco Stretch S6. The Stretch S6 offers better maneuverability, and it has hot water washing and hot air drying. 3 clutch features, in my opinion, that make it more worthwhile. Now, it's going to be about the same cost as the S5 Pro 2. So if you're thinking about the S5 Pro 2, you'll have a choice to make between those two. But budget-friendly, value-wise, S5 or the Stretch S6, that's going to be my go-to option still for a wet dry vac.